Hello and welcome everyone. I am Vishal Khandelwal and this is the One Person Show. This show is an open ended exploration into the minds of the wisest people around to help us learn to think, invest, and live each day a little better. You can learn more at vishalkhandelwal.com. My guest today is Vinod Sethi. Vinod served as Managing Director of Morgan Stanley Investment Management until February 2001 and served as its Chief Investment Officer and Portfolio Manager for 12 years. He is a graduate in chemical engineering and holds a degree in BTech from the IIT Mumbai and an MBA in finance from Stern School of Business, New York University. Vinod has maintained a low public profile all these years, but he's a veteran in the Indian equity investment space with an experience of more than 3 decades. The little I have read and known about him, I find a man who has not just been a multidisciplinary thinker, but also a true karma yogi who has combined his inner voice at a number of times with mindful decisions and rightful efforts. When I was studying about Vinod's life and experiences, I could remember a 1910 speech delivered by the former US President Theodore Roosevelt. It was titled The Man in the Arena. Roosevelt said, and I quote, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly." With this description and with no further delay, let me welcome Vinod to the One Person Show. Thank you, Vinod, for agreeing to do this.
Thank you, Vishal. It's a pleasure, and that was a wonderful quote. I never heard that before, but that's wonderful.
Well, there's a chapter in my book, if you
Yeah,
may read on this, The
okay.
Man in the Arena.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
it's
could
a good one.
easily recollect that. Yeah, great. So thank you. So let me start with the very first question by quoting English poet William Wordsworth, who used the expression, "The child is the father of the man." In that light, tell us about your family background, early life, and lessons that played a role in what you became as an adult.
Well, I was born in Bombay. My father was from the north. My mother was from the south. So I was a prototypical sort of born in Maharashtra. So I was sort of this all India child, if you will.
Uh-huh.
And I lost my father very early, and so I was really brought up by my mother. And I went to school in Bombay, Bombay Scottish. Then I went to college in Bombay, IIT Bombay, and I studied at NYU for my finance because I was interested in being on Wall Street at that time, and that school was right outside Wall Street. So that, in a nutshell, was sort of my my 1 minute summary of my
Mhm.
background. Uh,
Great. And the lessons, if you could recollect, that really actually helped you while you were growing up.
well, there are many. I think there are many. I think I, in a way, on hindsight, I was blessed that I had to find my own way because I lost my father early, and my mother wasn't so. She brought me up very well, but she wasn't so well versed in the outside world, if you will. Uh, so I think initially it felt like a drawback, but on hindsight, I quickly figured out that my options are to listen to my inner voice, make mistakes, listen to my inner voice, or listen to other people's advice. So I quickly shut the second option out. I figured that I'm willing to take the bet that that the universe is compassionate, creative, responsive, and I listen to my inner voice, and that's how I will sort of proceed, and which is what I did. And so I think there were many other lessons that there were many sort of what you may call there were many reaffirmations down that path. from various teachers, people who I work for, and so on and so forth. That sort of let me, it became very clear to me that the sort of path I'm following is the path I should follow. So there was corroboration, if you will. So in summary, I would say that listening to my inner voice and not having any idols, any hero or anyone guiding me was, on hindsight, not a bad thing because obviously at that stage, early in life, it is sort of a risky thing. But I think your inner voice takes you the furthest because there are lots of jaded voices out there who sort of have experience, but that's the reason why startups work sometimes, and experienced companies don't work because I guess the universe is a fresh new cup of tea every day, and so you need a fresh pair of eyes every day and a fresh pair of ears every day to see it. So I think I was, on hindsight, it was good and bad. It was obviously bad because it's tough uh, to not have a father figure, if you will. But on hindsight, I developed the quality that at the end of the day I listen to only myself. So and I think that is something I encourage people also to do, which is people say, "What books you read? Do you recommend books to read? Do you recommend this and that?" I keep telling people that listen to your spend some time listening to your voice. Your inner guide, your inner compass is sort of out there, alive and kicking, and try to listen to it as much as you would like to read other things. No, I'm not discouraging people from reading other things. I'm not saying that, but you need to combine that with what works for you. So I think that to me was what set me off on a slightly different tangent. So so like. So in I realized that in college because at IIT I started reading the Economic Times. I started, the first second year of IIT, I realized like this is not for me. I mean, okay, I got in here, you know, and it was a great education. Nothing to take away from all of that. But I followed my own sort of weird path, which is I started working for various research agencies as a student. I decided that instead of hanging around and just being a student, I didn't like this idea of being penniless. I didn't like this idea of being dependent. I didn't like this idea of. I never took money after the age of 18 from my mother, so I didn't like it. I wanted to be a wealthy student. So I took off on a different tangent. I started doing research projects for various research agencies. Then later on, I did work for the Indian Market Research Bureau. I did some work for the Tata Economic Consultancy Services. And that was very helpful because that's where I learned about industry, about research, industrial market. I was doing industrial market research. I was sort of combining my engineering background with what might interest these firms. And I found a clear empty spot, which is that none of them had an industrial market research division. So I was this young kid who became the head of the industrial market research division because I was the only kid in town doing it. So that's how I learned about industry. That's how I started traveling. That's how. So just taking a radically different path, not taking up a summer internship at Hindustan Lever, not doing the usual thing, turned out to be a good thing. And so even applying for GMAT in the 80s was not fashionable because most people from IIT took a GRE, went for engineering because in GMAT you don't get scholarships for MBAs and all of that. But I decided that I'll take the GMAT. I don't know why. I mean, you might think it's insane, but inner voice.
Right.
but inner voice leads you there. And I wanted to go be on Wall Street, and I wanted to go to NYU only
Oh yeah.
because it was right outside Wall Street. I mean, it was 100 feet away from Wall Street those days. So I said, like, why bother? Why bother with anything else? And as luck would have it, it happened. It happened. I got a scholarship, and so I have no explanation how it all happened,
Mm-hmm.
but it happened. Of course, I did well in my GMAT and all of that. So maybe
Right.
these small things contributed,
Right.
but many other people also do well in the GMAT. So so
Right.
so that's how it all sort of began. So I don't. So having studied IIT, having studied quantum mechanics, having studied everything, all over the years, I've started doubting the value of just pure logic and the incremental path. You
Uh-huh.
see, so life is about leaps, and once in a while, you need to think like that.
Right.
So, and every day offers you that opportunity to leap.
Right.
So your inner voice also sort of guides you there if you wish to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a risky path, many people think, but
Mm-hmm.
my suggestion to people is that it's the fun path.
Right.
It sort of gets you to do things that you probably meant to do.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's good you mentioned about the inner voice right at the very start, because you have, as your experience suggests, you have listened to that inner voice quite a number of times, and there are quite a number of questions which I have
Yeah.
across your various life stages and experiences over the past many years. The first thing is one of the leaps that you took was joining Morgan Stanley in your like in your late 20s, straight out of your MBA from Stern School of Business. And when you resigned in 2001, you were managing actually $2.4 billion, if that number is right, of the firm's investments in India. You were doing very well at such a young age, and you just moved on. Why? Was it just the inner voice, or there was something else that really was guiding you at that point of time?
No, it is always everything in life is multipolar, multidimensional, 360
Mm-hmm.
degree. So there is never
Mm-hmm.
only one reason. But yes, the inner voice finally takes you. See, frankly, I people thought Morgan Stanley was a career and a job. I thought it was an educational institute.
Okay.
I was learning there. And and the amazing thing is they're paying me to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was crazy. I mean, to me, I never expected I'll work in any firm for 12 years or 13 years, and so on and so forth. I was always a bit of a free spirit, and I couldn't be bothered about reporting to work in the morning and having a boss and all of that. So I figured but I wanted to do this thing for India. I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to open the doors for India because that is the time in the 80s when I was seeing that Latin America was getting large flows, Mexico was getting flows of 20, 30 billion, all of that. That process had begun. These
Mm-hmm.
sort of emerging market, this first sort of, so it became my sort of, uh, funnily, I've always been a nationalist, in an odd sort of way. I'm not outwardly political or
Mm-hmm.
even sort of, but I wanted to do something for India, and I
Mm-hmm.
figured that, and I didn't want to lead a life of a pure Western life. I didn't want to be in Mike Milken's team, or I didn't want to be in someone's team and just doing arbitrage or M&A sitting on Wall Street. I wanted to do
Mm-hmm.
something that would impact my country.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, my mother was here, my family was here, so I felt it would be unwise as the only sort of family member who's earning to be totally detached from India. So I figured that, and then the more I thought about it, and I kept thinking about it, and I said, like, what, India seems to be well poised for it.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, Morgan Stanley was an extended university.
Okay.
I was learning, and it gave me the opportunity to do things that I really wanted to do. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm really. So it was never a commercial or a career decision. to start with.
Mm-hmm.
It never
Mm-hmm.
was that I want to climb up the certain ladder. I want to be here for so many years. None of that.
Mm-hmm.
If you think like that, you won't take such large stakes in companies. You won't do crazy stuff. I mean, people would think it's crazy that you take 10-15% stakes in companies that could, who the hell knows what will happen to them. So it obviously wasn't a wise career decision, but
Mm-hmm.
it was a wise leap. Um, so so that was so that's how it was, and then it came a time when it felt more like a job, and
Mm-hmm.
so it was a time to move on. And there were many other reasons. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, one is I just didn't like the public. I'd become too much of a public person,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I didn't like that. I didn't like having uh, clients also.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't be bothered with clients, quite honestly. And to top it all, I mean, the okay. Now this is the time. This is where timing comes in, right? I mean, you can like many things, don't like many things, but Morgan Stanley was trading at an all-time high. It was trading at 6 or 8 times book, and I studied the balance sheet in great detail and so on and so forth, and I realized that this price is not coming back, and so my option is to sell the stock, which implies that I'm, you know, no longer a loyalist and no longer, so it's sort of opening the door for my exit, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept selling my Morgan Stanley stock because, and I had these long discussions with all sorts of senior people who thought I was, but I came to the conclusion that it is better to be slightly wealthy and unemployed than to be employed and middle class.
Mm-hmm.
And so I figured that, I mean, I was convinced that I suffer from a problem, which is that I examine something in great detail, and then I come to a point of certainty when I think I can see the future. I see it clearly. Now, this could be a grand delusion, and maybe this is all. So I came to this point of certainty where I felt that Morgan Stanley stock is this is it. So my choice is to be retired and with some money in the bank, or I'll just be working. Like basically, what happened, I think, when I studied the balance sheets of financial companies in 2001, basically to the 2008 crisis was visible in the 2001 balance sheets. That's what happened because I saw that balance sheets were leveraged 50s to 1. We were trading at 6 to 8 times book value. uh, and it just didn't make sense because when you're leveraged that high, and the leverage was even higher in my view because there was all sorts of cute accounting practices. I thought maybe I'm wrong, but I was the investor, so I decided to get out. And on hindsight, that was a good decision because 20 years later, the price is still 40% below what it was when I sold it.
That's right.
So without bonuses, no dilutions, nothing. So
Mm-hmm.
so there are always many reasons. There's an inner
Right.
voice, but
Uh-huh.
you can't get poetic and you can't get romantic about inner voices.
Uh-huh.
You need to base it in reality. Exit price, entry price, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're so basically, we just got lucky that we all got in the 80s, company stock at half times book, and it went to 6 8 times book, and earnings went up 10 times. So you do the math.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the point?
Right.
What's the point of hanging in there if you think the price is going to collapse?
Yep.
And on hindsight, the price could have gone to zero in 2008
Mm-hmm.
if the
Yeah,
government hadn't bailed out these companies. They'd actually gone to zero.
that's true.
So
That's true.
so that's so it's a nice it's a it's a multi-dimensional reason for leaving. So
Right, right.
I look at the whole thing very differently. Like people, I don't understand when people talk in terms of career path and ladder and all. That doesn't like appeal to me. So,
Mm-hmm.
so, so that's why when I left, I mean, to me it felt like felt great because uh, wouldn't you feel great if you're just sitting at home and having more cash in the bank than you working 24 hours a day?
Right.
So I mean, to me uh, it was nothing. And but funnily, the it became very well publicized within Morgan Stanley that I was selling at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So this becomes a big conversation topic among all ex Morgan Stanley people who I run into. You
Mm-hmm.
know that they think I'm the sucker, I'm the rat who abandoned the ship. You know,
You abandoned the
that's
ship.
all.
Right.
Yeah, that's all.
Right. Right. Reaching.
So
Yeah, that's right.
yeah,
You talked about reaching to a point of certainty, and you've done that multiple times, right? You're looking at
yeah,
things from a very certain point of view. That requires a lot of courage, I'm sure. You've been through Ivy League
yeah,
education, but I'm not so sure whether that kind of education also provides you or teaches you hunger or teaches you the idea of listening to your inner voice. So the
correct.
way I'm trying to connect the dots is what you mentioned at the very start about your upbringing, with you being raised by a single parent and no father figure to look up to. So, was that the reason that you really have built courage in your life to really look at things with certainty and have actually aspired for that and actually achieved things that you've wanted in life? Where did that courage come from?
Well, that courage came from my mother. My
Uh
mother
huh.
was very courageous. She lost my father when she was, I think, 28 or 29. She she brought me up very well, and it wasn't easy. And I'm not
Right.
even so I had a real hero sitting at home. So
Right.
courage was not an option in my family. You had to be courageous because you had to face your mother. So
That's true.
my mother was probably one of the most courageous people I know. And I've seen, and I don't see it. I'm not saying it emotionally. I'm saying it very rationally because I've seen her in various situations, very difficult situations, and sometimes when I think about it, I feel that I don't come close. So courage uh, is yeah something that you can't learn. Schools don't, schools and colleges teach you nothing that you really need to learn, which is courage, conviction, uh, faith, risk taking, leadership. How do you take people along? How do you communicate effectively? So I think there are many things that education doesn't teach you how to deal with stress. So education teaches you foolish concepts like success and so on and so forth, which unnecessarily set you on a path. Um while career-wise you might do something, but it sets you on a path of relativistic thinking. That the road to life is this Darwinian world of survival of the fittest. It makes you an unhappy person. So whether you do well or not, so I've met lots of people who've done very well, lots of people who haven't done well. But one thing is universally common that happiness is not their natural state because of all this sort of education hasn't taught us to be 360 degrees. Education has taught us to be sort of uh, utilitarian in some ways. You know. So these things, I don't think education can really teach you, but life can. So life is your real educator, I think, and life is your real guru. And I think I guess I probably had one advantage. One was my mother, of course, and the second is that uh, I think early on I realized that no one's opinion matters. You see, so So there was a time when things were bad and no one, uh, you know, you know, thought anything about you, and there were times that were very good when everyone thought everything about you. So your options are to either get detached and see the process for what it is, or be deluded and believe that that one of the two is right, but both aren't right. So I think I think when other people's opinions don't matter so much, and uh, you're not a victim of a peer group too much.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell people that I mean, have as many friends and everything, but having sometimes you get condemned and chained by your peer group also. So there was this group of money managers, youngsters used to come and see me, and they do still do, but I see that they'd be better money managers if they were not comparing themselves to each other. You see,
That's what
uh,
the alpha world has done to us. Maybe
yeah.
everyone is seeking alpha.
So I look at them and I say like, I think they're all bright guys. They're all youngsters. I
Yeah.
really like them, and I spend more time talking to youngsters than old people nowadays. And so because I also learn, and so I see that sometimes these things also constrain you. You see, from being
Mm-hmm.
risk-taking, courageous. Courage is also part of comes from the ability of not being chained to others' point of view. You see,
Right.
so even in investing, I mean, it is very difficult to continue holding something which no one believes in. Your trader thinks you're a fool. Your colleague thinks everyone thinks you're a fool. I mean, even today
Mm-hmm.
that is the case. Everyone thinks
Yeah.
I'm doing, like so. So I think courage is something you develop.
Right.
Something you develop, and the price you pay for not being courageous is also very high.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think you have a choice in life. It's better to be courageous than not, I think.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. So, talking about the first well-known, so of course, courageous act as
Yeah,
far as investing in stock market is concerned, right? I go back to the time of Infosys IPO, right?
yeah.
So that's one story that has become a folklore in the Indian stock market of how the IPO was undersubscribed, even when they were raising just 13 crore rupees, and in fact, it was bailed out by Morgan Stanley, which picked up a 13% stake in the IPO, and after that as well. Being at helm at Morgan Stanley, what gave you the confidence of picking up such a large stake in a business model that was yet to be tested? So, was it of course, it must be a combination of people you were betting on and the business you were betting on. But what exactly gave you confidence in such a small, unknown company to bet such a large amount at that point of time?
No, I was sort of well positioned. For me, it wasn't so risky because firstly, I was an engineering student. I understood the
Mm-hmm.
model that basically, you're placing a 50,000 rupee engineer for a $50,000 fee. So you
Mm-hmm.
do the math, and so there wasn't
Right.
rocket science to the business model. And in the second year or third year of IIT, I had submitted a plan to set up a software services company, and I'd written to the Exim Bank. And the Exim Bank executive director also met me, and I went in these rubber slippers to meet the executive director of the Exim Bank, and he heard me out. Um, but obviously, I didn't have any money, and I had no background, so I was maybe 18 or whatever. So, but the business model is something I fully understood because I understood that at the age of 18 because that's what even I wanted to do. So, so when this came to me, the business model, I needed no explanation. So
Mm-hmm.
the only explanation was who the human beings are.
Right.
And I still distinctly remember I met Narayan Murthy for like a 3 or 4 hour meeting at in the Taj in the Sea Lounge.
Mm-hmm.
So we were both too poor to be club members and all of that. So we were sitting in the Sea Lounge. And so, but that was it. So I figured that the guy is good. He's poor chap is worked for already for some 20 years, and he's struggling to raise a little bit of money, and the consequences are dire if it doesn't happen. So I figured that even if I lose money, which I won't, even if I lose money, I've lost it for a good cause. It's okay.
Hmm.
You know. So we did it. We did it. But those are the sort of transactions I've always sort of enjoyed doing.
Right.
I've enjoyed doing things which are like at the sort of bottom of the cycle sort of stuff.
Right.
So it was a great thrill to do it also, and
Right.
so that's what happened basically. And so I didn't think much about it, and
Hmm.
then the stock meandered for a while and then took off and all of that. Um, but of course, Narayan Murthy didn't think about it, nor did I think about it that it'll go to the heights that it did. But then life, everything is non-linear,
That's true.
so nothing stops. Where you think nothing stops at the sort of mean. Everything
Hmm.
bounces off the mean upwards or steeply downwards.
Right. Right. Right.
So life is not inherently non-linear. That's what's happened to Infosys. So
And how long did you hold on to the stock Infosys after
we
you bought
held
the early
on.
issues?
We held on for a long time, and this is where the whole asset management mutual fund business came to is one of the reasons why I sort of moved away from the institutional management business, because you had all these parameters. So
Hmm.
the parameters being that no stock can be more than X%, your concentration can't be more than Y%. So the freedom to just so if the original Morgan Stanley portfolio of the early 90s was just held on, that perhaps
Hmm.
would have been worth over 20 billion today.
Yeah.
But then there are there are all these processes. People want to redeem. Rajiv Gandhi gets assassinated. There's 2008 crisis. So there's just so much drama that goes on that
Hmm.
it hinders you from just sitting back and riding it out. You see, and so concentration became a big issue for us, which
Yeah.
is that so I think four or five stocks accounted for some 70% of a I forget the exact numbers now, but some
Yeah.
few stocks accounted for like 70% of a portfolio, and so
Right.
that became a crazy red flag. So periodically we had to sell a lot of our large holdings, unfortunately.
Hmm.
But then I wasn't there at the firm so long, so I don't know what happened after I left. Uh, but yeah, we had to sell. But by and large, we were holding on for
Yeah.
uh, for some of these major holdings were our holdings for a long time.
You were also among the buyers of last resort for Tata Motors, and you also
Yeah,
bought large stakes, yeah, in
yeah,
HDFC initially, right, and
yeah.
Hero Honda, right. Again, what was the conviction? If you can just run us through the thought process on one of those ideas, one of those endearing ideas out of these three or four. Which one would you pick and why? Right?
No, I can tell you all of them if you have the
Oh
time.
yeah, of course, yes,
So,
of course, yes.
Tata Motors, I remember I love that stock because every sort of 7 8 years it would go down the down the tubes, and then
Hmm.
then it'd be $50, then it'll go to $600. So I think it was at that one of those inflection points, early 90s, I think, when they were doing a GDR. There was no subscriber,
Hmm.
so the issue was not going anywhere, and I may be little foggy on the details, but broadly this is the story.
Sure, sure.
So I remember the entire Tata board management had come to our offices, and Mr. Tata himself was there, which was a very impressive thing for the entire. I mean, half of our teams came to the meeting because Mr. Tata was also sitting there,
Okay.
and so we sat and I noticed a sense of sort of dejection and that the issue is not going well. I could make out, and so there was a shortfall of whatever 15% for the GDR, and obviously we were all poker faced and we showed no interest, and we just um, but then next morning at then we it became clear to us that this has to be the absolute bottom, because if not only is the price down, there are no sellers, but even the management has gotten so sort of, the last surrender has happened.
Right. Right.
You see,
Right.
so to me, to us, it was a classic. It was a classic that, I mean, as Soros said, buy when, when there's no one left to buy, you should buy.
That's right.
So that's what we did. So I think we bought 15% of the issue at that point, and we sort of, in a way, caught the bottom. So that was a good psychological sort of thing, and but we also saw a pattern. Every cycle it would do this. So we profited from the Tata Motors cycle for, I think, multiple cycles. So so that was that. So the second one you mentioned, Hero Honda.
Hero Honda HDFC. Yeah.
Hero Honda. Hero Honda was. I met Bridgemont Munjal a couple of times. The price used to be like 20, 30, $40, 20 to 40, somewhere floating around. His equity was, his market cap was nothing. It was basically, less than 50 crores. Okay. And I thought the guy was great. The guy was fabulous, I thought. He had clear answers. He's this guy who started the company at 69. But for some odd reason, I developed a lot of, respect in his quiet decency and his very calm responses to everything. And it also became clear to me that this business generates cash. So he doesn't require. He was building some 25, 50,000 scooters a year, some very small number. But it became clear to me that the cash generates enough cash that this guy could even produce 1 million, and he won't come back to the equity market. So that to me was so. At the end of the day, I'm looking for capital productivity.
Right.
I'm looking for a gusher that where I put $1 and it drains dollars all your life. Okay, same with Infosys. So struck me. And that time there was this universal consensus that scooter is the safer thing to do, and motorcycles will never work in India. God knows where this concept came from, but everyone and his mother-in-law believed in this, that motorcycles will never work in India. Okay. So it was the consensus was so strong that thankfully it didn't get to me so much. So I did some work. I said, let's do some work. And so I looked at the motorcycle scooter market worldwide. I looked at Honda's market share worldwide and all of that. And I realized that Honda is 50% of the motorcycle market in every country in the world. Not one country. There's no country where it's not 50. And then I also found out that motorcycle is 10x of scooters everywhere else, except, for a bunch of people in India who think like they're special, that scooters will only work here. Then I also did some more homework and I realized that scooters are more unsafe than motorcycles. So, and that was the time when, so then it struck me, guy is good, Honda is backing it, motorcycle works everywhere in the world. Indians are not aliens, we are also human beings only. So at the end of the day, the same logic should work. Yeah, and this whole country will be on two wheels one day. Because who's going to buy? Everyone's not going to be on a Mercedes. I mean, the first step will be scooters. Everyone was on a bicycle those days or a moped. And you're getting entry into a Honda company for like 30, 40 crore market cap. I mean, like how? I mean, how much do you need to think? I mean, to me, to everyone else, it looked like a bold decision. To me, it looked like like even if I'm like totally drunk, I'll make this decision. So because it was as simple as that, I thought. So that's what gave us the conviction to take a big stake. Because at the end of the day, you have the combination of good management, good macro, good potential demand, good JV partner. Honda was the leader, and Munjal and he had a multinationals had a good equation. So all of that, and so I mean, I was we were fortunate, I think. Same with HDFC, same logic, similar logic, which is HDFC was 1 or 2 times earning. And so I kept asking people around, like, why 1 or 2? I mean, like, I met Deepak Parekh, I met Deepak Satrulekar, I met all these guys. They're great guys. I mean, like, genuine, generally competent and decent and running a good show and all of that. And, but why, but like, why 1 times, 2 times? I mean, like, at least 10 times, 5 times? So नहीं everyone said like company में क्या है those days everything was about assets and replacement cost and ACC का replacement cost है 10,000 crores का इसका क्या है ये तो rented office में बैठता है Raymond House में employees are his only asset they can walk away asset क्या है so I said okay I mean this is one way to look at life but the other way to look at life is cash flow correct I mean like this is a real balance sheet, real business. The country is homeless. They run a good shop. So what can you do? And the whole top management team was good. And the funny thing is, most of the top management team is still with Deepak. And there's great credit to Deepak Parekh. I mean, you have to hand it to him that there's something to learn from that whole crop of that generation. So they were all very good. They were all much younger than today, but they were as competent even then. And you had an entry point which, and again, the macro was in your favor. I mean, it was just, it was just, I would say, a mental block in the way people perceived services companies or finance companies those days. So that gave us the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And you combine capital with courage and conviction very well. So multiple examples you talked about, right? Tell us an example where you had the capital and you also had the conviction, but you did not have that courage, or maybe you pulled it back and you did not invest, or one idea which you regret missing, a mistake of omission from those times.
Yeah, I never sort of regret. I believe that the market is like a river flowing,
Mm-hmm.
and you're sort of what you may call it. You're a fisherman maybe, or whatever you can want to call yourself. And you go there with your bucket, and you collect your thing. As long as you get something, it's cool. You don't want to catch every fish in the river. Let others also eat. It's a very dharmic thing to do because you're not making money by killing someone. You're not making money by
Right.
beating someone. You're just dipping into the river, taking a bucket and going. So I've never thought about what I've missed out, and I've never wanted to catch the last fish in the river
Mm-hmm.
or have those sort of regrets. Yes, I do have a bias, which is if I have high conviction and capital, I do have a bias, which is that I'd like to be the first one in. I don't
Mm-hmm.
like to get into the highway midway. So I either get in at the beginning, and
Right.
or I don't,
Right.
because everyone has biases. So that is
Absolutely.
my sort of bias, but I don't regret it because I'm aware of it,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm comfortable with that. So if you come up with a great idea, which I think is great, but half the world is already in it, and the stock is already up 4 or 5 times, and you think it'll go up another 4 or 5 times, that doesn't interest me.
Right.
But what interests me is a one-time stock. A Hero Honda, HDFC, thought about to interest me deeply.
Right.
But if you ask me to, HDFC had 40 times earnings, 30 times earnings, that doesn't interest me.
Mm-hmm.
You see, even if I might have conviction in capital, because
Right.
there is no inner explosion. The
Mm-hmm.
inner explosion and the inner nirvana, if you will,
Yeah.
happens when you've caught something that was on its back.
Right.
And so it's a game in a way. So yeah, I mean, there are many situations where I probably have the option of getting into the highway midway.
Mm-hmm.
Say you're going from Bombay to Delhi and you can get in Ahmedabad, but that's of no interest to me.
Right.
You
Do you
see?
maintain that boldness even now after 30 years, or
Yeah, yeah,
like?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I like that because I think everyone's given, everyone has only a certain edge. You can't be everything to everyone. The ball is coming at
Mm-hmm.
200 miles an hour every
That's right.
day. So the market is not some. Uh, so you have to be aware of your edge and play only that edge, because if I even try to do trading, even if I try to do everything, it won't work, because in every segment of the market there is a maestro who plays to his strength,
Oh, that's true.
and so I think one should just stick to that.
That's true.
Yeah, and not try to be everywhere. You know.
Everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. I've learned that you have a habit of reading one annual report per day, even of unlisted businesses outside India, across the world, right? So, how long have you been maintaining this habit, and what really gets you to do this daily?
I like it because I treat myself as not as a chartered accountant. I don't treat myself as a finance person. I treat myself as a person who's interested in the nature of money. You see, so I'm interested to see how it flows, how it grows. Where is the alchemy? Where's the alchemy? How does capital expand? If you see capital can just it goes through the roof. It goes down the toilet. Everything. So, so I'm more interested in the nature of money, or or in understanding Mahalakshmi, if you will, basically. You see, so that interests me. To me, that is very interesting, because there are certain patterns.
That's right.
There are certain patterns, and so as part of understanding those patterns, it's important to read annual reports, not for the what it did this quarter or last quarter and so on and so forth. I'm really looking at the flow. So the other way I do it is I stare at 30 or 40-year charts
Okay.
of a whole bunch of. So so on a Sunday, when people would rather watch Netflix, I would open charts, and at 2 hours I just look at random charts, and why Netflix went the way it did, why did everything, anything, any stock. I just look for 30 years, and it tells a story. It's as
Mm-hmm.
exciting as Netflix,
Right. 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 I'm sure.
because there's a reason why GE is, for instance, gone nowhere in the last decade or two, and and then you combine it with some balance sheet reading, and with some of the thing, it gives you a sort of and it hones a skill. You've already forecast how the 30-year chart will be in your
Mm-hmm.
brain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're just looking for reaffirmation in the actual chart.
That's right.
And so
That's right.
that simulation helps you making long-term calls, in the sense of what will be the next new thing that will work for the next 10 years, 20 years, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So from that point of view, yes, I do read a balance sheet, but that's incomplete. I also read long-term charts,
Long-term charts. Sure.
almost
And
very
yeah.
regularly. Yeah.
Right. And after reading like thousands and thousands of companies and charts, right?
Yeah.
Have you found, like, I'm sure you must have you found patterns and commonalities among the potential wealth creators, the companies that end up actually creating a lot of wealth for shareholders over 20, 30 years versus the remaining 95, 99% of the market that actually destroys wealth? So are there any commonalities that you found in businesses, the kind of businesses that create wealth for shareholders long term?
Yes. Yes.
And
There
what
is.
are those, like, a few patterns or commonalities that you found? Yeah.
The commonalities very often are in the inherent capital productivity of the business
Mm-hmm.
or the way the business is run.
Okay.
Uh, if that doesn't exist, it just falls apart. You can do all sorts of gimmicks. You can do ADRs, GDRs. You can have all sorts of hype, but at the end of the day, the magic is there. Is there inherent financial productivity in that business? And if there is, you just ride the wave. So at the end of the day, Asian Paints has done well because of the financial productivity embedded in it.
Right.
And for instance, so there are many such names. So everything else becomes an overlay. So there are clear patterns in business. There are clear patterns in the way the market perceives the business. There are inherent patterns in the personal habits and intentions of the management. At the end of the day, intentions drive outcome in life. So, so the reality, somehow your intentions, good or bad, hidden
Mm-hmm.
or otherwise, that's for
Mm-hmm.
you to judge as an investor.
Right.
But they all sort of come to the surface.
Right. Over time, right?
So
Because
over time,
it's difficult to identify the real intentions from the made up ones, right?
but you can,
Yeah,
but
I'm
you
sure.
can. You can by not meeting the management, but you
By
can
not
by
meeting the
looking at
management.
footprints.
Yeah.
Patterns tell you.
Okay.
So always, the other reason for reading reports and so on and so forth is fundamentally many entrepreneurs by definition have to be deluded. That's what they are doing. What they're doing. Someone's building cement. Someone's building a road to Mars, and someone's building blah blah blah. So fundamentally, an entrepreneur is a motivated person who so the great skill of money management a money management manager needs is to forget where vision begins or ends and when delusion begins and ends. So, but out of 100 entrepreneurs, I would say most of them have elements of both vision and delusion. So, and it's hard to predict because if you know any schizophrenic, you'll find them very convincing.
That's right.
So there's no difference. So therefore, footprints matter.
Mm-hmm.
Opinions don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
What you think or what the management told you is of no consequence.
Right.
But what is of consequence is footprints.
Right.
And footprints are balance sheets. Footprints are actual, you know, track record coming up over the years, and so on
Right.
and so forth. So there are many other ways to gauge
Mm-hmm.
to gauge that. But at the end of the day, you need that. You need so I think capital productivity combined with what market perceives. So what I mean by market perceives is if market perceives a great stock at 1 times earning, you should buy it. But
Mm-hmm.
if the market perceives a great stock but trades it at 8 times book, like it say it did Morgan Stanley in 2001, you shouldn't buy it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So even if
Right.
you have a good company what perception is embedded in it is also of great consequence to you as an investor.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good enough to buy a company at 100 times earnings just because it's a good company.
Right. And lots of
Uh,
good companies are trading at 100 plus times
correct,
earnings.
correct.
Right.
So I would always urge caution that it's a self-feeding loop. Delusion is a self-feeding loop because something is 100 times earning, you think it's good, and because it's good, you think it's at 100 times earnings. I remember meeting the ACC managing director. I forget his name now. When the stock was, it used to be 100 rupee stock, so it was like
Mm-hmm.
basically nothing. It was $100.
Mm-hmm.
I remember meeting the head of ACC at that time, and as soon as I entered the room, he said, "Why have you come? There's no future.
Okay.
Okay, this industry is down the toilet. There's nothing. There's nothing here." So I said, "Okay," and I met him again when the price was 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
Same person. I'm the
Yeah.
same. He's the same. Same office, same building, ACC house, opposite church gate. He tells me, "This is the best story in the world. It's the cheapest stock you can find."
And that was during the Harshad Mehta peak.
That, I mean, I forget the exact details. I'm
Okay, okay,
saying, yeah,
okay.
possibly. But
ACC was one of those stocks that was really pulled up.
I'm
Yeah, yeah.
saying
Okay.
life is reflexive.
Uh-huh.
Prices reinforce your concept of reality.
That is true.
So it's there's merit in the view that prices drive fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
It is not. It hasn't escaped me that
Okay.
prices drive fundamentals also in that sense.
Right.
And 100 रुपए में तो total depression and 10,000 bucks total elation.
Elation.
That मेरी तो बात कुछ और है. अदरवाइज 10,000 क्यों होता?
That is true.
हाँ.
That's
तो
true.
वो so that is
Right.
we have to be we have to be a little aware of that sometimes.
I'm sure. I'm sure. What role has intuition or intuitive thinking has to play in analysis? So you've analyzed a company, you found the capital structure good, the capital productivity good, the managements are like good, clean, right, and for have the right kind of foresight and the vision to grow the business. But from an analyst point of view, from your point of view as an investor, what role is that gut feeling or stomach telling you? Like Peter Lynn said, that stomach is one of the most important organs and not the brains while investing. So has it happened to you as well, where your intuitive thinking has actually reinforced or told you that yeah, this is something that I need to really pick up after doing all the
Yes.
analysis?
No, absolutely. In fact, that's a great frustration people have with analysts who work with me or through
Uh-huh.
ideas and me. That that I don't seem to act when they've completed their homework.
Uh-huh.
See, people have the natural urge कि I've spent 100 hours doing something, तो अभी कुछ act करो, बेचो खरीदो
Right.
कुछ तो करो. Uh, Whereas my view is that act when prices are going to go up or down,
Mm-hmm.
not when you've completed your homework. The
Yeah,
world is not, the market is not waiting for you to complete your homework for the prices to go up or down.
that's right.
So I would always urge a lot of my analysts. I still urge people, including myself, that de-link analysis from decision making.
Mm-hmm.
Because you spend 100 hours on something, you don't need to act. The
Right.
the the key to being a good money manager is to not act,
Not
but
that often.
or not link your hard work to your action.
That's right.
So you de-link the two. So keep working, because the point of conviction and intuition comes when it comes. But at that time, your homework should be complete. That time, you shouldn't be running around doing homework, because that intuition point will happen when it happens. So it is all it's all sitting in your brain, and but when you act, when your intuition sort of wakes up, in a way, the market whispers in your ear. Basically, the market whispers in your ear. Okay. At the end of the day, I'd say there's that's what it is. I think.
Right, right, right.
because there are 10,000 listed stocks. Why would you zone in on something that it happens because so you need to do a lot of work, but don't live under the delusion that your work has got you this brilliant idea. The work has given you the foundation for good seeds to grow. It's sort of, how do I say it? It's like a garden which has been well fertilized and watered and so on for some rose to bloom. So that's your research daily basis, you see. But the act of the rose coming is when there is a confluence of events. When there's a confluence when stock is either very dirt cheap or forgotten or very expensive, or there's the real world out there and you're ready with your homework. So, or rather, let's put it this way: it is like you have a finite number of bullets. There's a monster coming at you. There's a woolly mammoth coming at you. Okay, and I give you a gun with a few bullets. So now there are two ways you can respond. I've given you a gun with bullets, so you can start firing because मेरे पास है बंदूक और I'll start firing. The other way to look at it is I'll just sit. When the woolly mammoth shows up, I will fire.
Uh-huh.
See,
Right.
so research is like loading the gun, having the bullets.
Being
The
prepared.
opportunity is the woolly mammoth showing up. They're
Right.
not linked. You
Right,
having
right.
a gun gives you this arrogance that I'll fire, I'll hit a woolly mammoth. That is classic mistake of most analysts, and they find it a great affront to their ego that I listen to the whole idea for hours and I seem to just sit down. I don't.
Basically, the incentives in the say fund management industry may also like have some sort of blame because people are paid to act, right, rather than just having the intention, right? You get paid to act, so maybe that also causes
No, it
problems
is
from
true. It is true. I mean, I'm not blaming these analysts. We are all victims of a system, as you rightly
system, right?
said. The
Right.
system is unfortunately so, and I think that's the other reason for even not working in an institutional management firm because there was nothing to do 9 to 5 in the office. There was nothing to do. I mean, after you bought Hero, Honda, and Infosys, what do you want to do?
That's right.
So then you look like you're just sitting and reading a newspaper, right? But the
Mm-hmm.
system is geared to activity.
To activity. That's right.
You see, the system is geared to activity. So
Mm-hmm.
so then you just travel. Go.
Yeah.
I mean, just don't be in the office. I mean, what else? Uh,
Right.
just not be there,
Right.
and then go meet Hero Honda, go factory visit, do something. Not that you're not working, you're working even harder, frankly.
Yeah.
But it doesn't fit the classic 9 to 5 mold. It doesn't fit the institute, the way uh, systems are run. So 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 too much rigidity and order and discipline is doesn't work in the money management sort of
Mm-hmm.
world. I think you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But there are different roads to Rome. For some people, it might be working. So I'm not saying that I have the monopoly on what works and doesn't work. But
Right.
for me, it doesn't.
Yeah. So to live in so probably the kind of thing that you're talking about, acting in a way that you've picked up, say, a large stake in, say, in those times, like Hero Honda and SDFC, and you have nothing to like do really read newspapers and not really act again and again and again, even
Correct.
when the system wants you to do that, right? That calls for a sense of detachment from the outcome, I'm sure. At so were you always like this, or was it like your initiation or your study of scriptures or spirituality or meditation that really has helped you in terms of so coming back from trying to mix investing and spirituality here, right?
No, it
Especially when a lot
clearly
of yeah.
helps. It clearly helps because the more your intuitive mind and the clutter in your head decreases.
Mm-hmm.
Uncluttering your head is key, and so meditation is good. Listening to wise people is good. You're not the first wise man on earth. So if
Hmm.
you listen to Socrates, if you listen to a Buddha, you listen to an Osho, I've listened to all of them, Lao Tzu, all of them. I mean, I've spent
Right.
Marcus Aurelius, all sorts of people. You realize that there are a lot of wise people who sort of laid the road for you,
Hmm.
and meditation is part of that. So 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 if you read Lao Tzu, or if you read if you I mean, Lao Tzu tells you how the world works,
Yeah.
basically, and so there's a lot out there. So clearly, I think markets can either uh, destroy you or make you detached as you follow markets, because prices will either go
Hmm.
to 10,000 or go to zero. So
Hmm.
you can either kill yourself by going crazy, or you learn detachment. You see, so
Yeah.
so you have two options to. So markets are, or in fact, in my view, markets are also a great sadhana, a great meditation technique,
Okay.
because you have Parvinder Singh sitting in your office saying how great Rand Baxi will become, and so on. And then 2 years later, he's dead, and then a
Hmm.
few years later, his children are in prison.
Hmm.
So, but you followed the stock price. I mean,
Hmm.
he physically sat in front of you, and all that happened.
Right.
So it's history. You're seeing all are talented people. I mean, all are great people.
Hmm.
So markets can either make you detached if you take the lessons right,
Right.
and I would urge people to stare at the 300-year stock price chart, 200 or 300-year stock price chart of the East India Company. I've done it.
Okay.
You will understand the actions of the East India Company a little better,
Okay.
much better,
Right.
much better. In fact, this is a PhD thesis that I think someone, I mean, I'm happy to guide someone whoever wants to do it. I'm too lazy to do it, but uh, yeah, I mean, the summary of the whole East India story, company story, is embedded in the. If you stare at the 200, 300-year old stock price chart,
How do you summarize that in a minute?
you can't summarize it in a way. It'll take a
Okay.
lifetime. Even I've not summarized it, but
Yeah.
I'm convinced by looking at it that uh, that is actions as we perceive,
Okay.
and the motivations for the actions as shown in the stock price are two different animals. So what I'm saying is that their actions as we perceive in India is one thing. Because we were actors in it, the actions as how the stock price is reacting to their actions is telling you another story.
Okay.
So I'm saying that a lot of the battles they fought, a lot of the things they did was to keep their stock price going, not because they were, the reason why opium was going to China, all of that. The stock price is a good summary of of actions. Forget that. Even today, if you'll see that so many actions of people are finally, because the market is leading them in that direction. So if you followed the recent European football thing, with the top 6 or 8 clubs, I forget the exact details, try to form a cabal to basically double their profits. Okay, that's all. And it created some, lots of chaos and turmoil and so on and so forth. But when you think about it, the action is determined by the incentive structure for the shareholders to maximize their wealth. And so that is the underlying motivation. The rest is a story. You see that you hear about, they met in this hotel and they formed this cabal and they did all of that. Okay, fair enough. Not disputing that. But but prices, stock, uh, how prices react and how managements have to behave to keep prices going up determines a lot of events on the ground. Is what I'm basically sort of saying.
Right. So
So
that requires quite a deep study in the sense of all that we see, right? Frontline newspapers or read by reading history, right? Uh, the idea that you've talked about is to actually go much deeper and see things
correct.
from their perspective, or see what really was driving those people, right, to do things that actually became history as we know it.
Absolutely correct. I mean, if I may give you another example, I mean, I looked at the. I read up on the World War One. I mean, Niall Ferguson is a financial historian, so he writes history from a financial point of view. He used to, no longer. And so he wrote a great book on World War One, which I was reading, and more than reading the book, I started reading the data he had, all the balance sheets, and he had all the details of the war expenditures, kill ratio, all sorts of stuff. So I stopped
Hmm.
reading the book. I started looking at the tables, and there's
Hmm.
some like 100 tables in the book, and to me it became I had a different idea after seeing that, which is what I realized is that Germany fought these five allies,
Hmm.
and the question I had in mind is how the hell did Germany even manage to fight? One thing is to fight one enemy. How do you fight the whole bloody world?
Yeah.
But then I looked at the numbers and I realized that the defense budget of Germany was only 20% of the Allied. So they
Okay.
basically, what you fought for 100, I fought for 20.
20.
So
Yeah.
I can go on. You will exhaust yourself.
That's right.
But finally, I'm fighting on a much so capital productivity.
Right.
Coming to capital productivity. So then I looked further, and then I looked at the kill ratio. How many allies died for Germans dead and all of that. And in the last month of the war, Allies lost 1.25 soldiers, and Germans lost only one, even at the fag end of the war. And the enemy never entered Germany, and Germany surrendered. Okay, these are the
Hmm.
facts. Okay,
Right.
these are the facts. Now, these
Right.
facts to me explain why World War II happened,
Hmm.
because Germans realized that they can take on the world.
Right. Right. Right.
Okay, and they realized that the enemy never came into our country, so there's obviously some political corruption at high levels and military
Hmm.
corruption, and so we surrendered.
Hmm.
At least that was the
Hmm.
delusion.
Right.
So that sets the stage for World War II to happen with a stronger leader,
Uh-huh.
with better armaments and better everything, and they happened to lose the war, but the kill ratio in World War II was 8:1. 8 allies dead for one German dead. So they.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is that facts and history and financial numbers explain a lot about future actions.
That's true. Quite fascinating as well.
Yeah. So how World War II was in a way a continuum of World War One becomes quite
Uh-huh.
evident if you look at all the facts of World War One. But
Hmm.
again, you need to look at the facts. So
That's right. That's right. Sure. Uh, Taking you back like 30 years, right? What do you know
Mhm.
about the world of investing and human behavior today that you wish you knew 30 years back when you were just getting started?
uh, well, when I was just getting started, I was learning as much as any other kid in town, basically. Uh, so yes, I mean I would have there's a lot of things I would have learned. I mean, a lot of the sort of ideas we're discussing now has come out of the experience of many decades of watching and reading and so on and so forth. Obviously, I didn't have that then. So obviously, I would say that's a regret. That's a natural evolution. I think you become a good investor, frankly, in your after only 25, 30 years of being. I don't think you become a good investor on day one. It takes time and reading and all of that. So yes, in that way, you're it's you're wiser today. Hopefully, you're also more stupid. Maybe you're also more arrogant. So nature's a great socialist. It never gives you a clean run. So you may lack knowledge, but then at that point you didn't have arrogance and success on your shoulder. So that gives you an advantage. So basically, life is fair. Life is like so totally fair that you're only good as today. So I think what you have today, what you didn't have then, and so on and so forth. But there are some failures also embedded in all the learning that you've had. So life is a combination of learning and unlearning. So it isn't enough to say I'm just learning, but you also have to be aware of the fact of what aspects of what your experiences you need to drop off. And so that's a constant. I think life that way is, you know, uh, gives you an opportunity for every age. I don't think uh, one. I don't believe that rear view mirror or regrets or I would do something differently and so on so forth. I'd say the opportunities exist even today. So if you've learned your lessons, so I don't think the market is in any way, or life, if you will, in any way is all well dusted and done, and a fresh mind today has the same opportunities that you did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and why I say that. If you look at the indices, if you look at most of the S&P, or if you look at even the BSE, NSE, and so on, the mortality rate every decade is about 70 odd percent. So people come and go.
That's right.
So it's an ever learning. In a way, nature changes or doesn't change. I mean, you can argue both sides, and both are sort
That's
of
right.
true. Both are sort of
That's right.
true. That
Mm-hmm.
you can say the only constant is change.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you can say that
Mm-hmm.
the only constant is change.
Mm-hmm.
But there is change also. So I don't think it ever goes away. The opportunity set keeps rolling on. It keeps uh, life keeps rolling on. So
Right, right. And you
uh,
have to be receptive to that, right? You have you
correct,
because it's rolling on
correct.
for everyone, right?
It's
People
rolling for
either
everyone.
reject it or people accept it, right? Okay,
Correct.
great. So I was listening to your conversation with Mr. Durgesh at a CFA conference in 2019, and where he talked about your multidisciplinary skills, right, and the penchant for lifelong learning, as you said. You've been a practitioner of yoga. You've done meditation, Tibetan medicine, kung fu, and you've also spent time, as you just talked about, learning deeply about history, science, geography, right? How have you cultivated the curiosity to do the same? If you had to sum up maybe a couple of principles on how you approach the learning process or learning about the world, life, business, everything, maybe a couple of principles of how do you actually approach learning? What keeps you curious?
Good habits. Uh, Not realizing that you're still a student, that you've not
Mm-hmm.
arrived. That so I probably am reading the same as I'm reading when I was in IIT, maybe more.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Uh, I'd say good habits, because habits makes the man, and by
Right.
that I mean, uh, no one likes smoking the first day, but after the 10th cigarette, he can't live without it.
Right.
And so same with all habits. So what you cultivate becomes you. So I think basic, uh, basic, you have to have some basics, which is like, you take care of your health, you take care of your mind, you take care of your surroundings, your family. I mean, those are the, sort of basics. And you have to recognize that you need to sort of broadly follow the I mean, you can call it 8 by 8 by 8 rule, or you can call it a 10 by 10 by 4 rule, whatever. That you need to give some time to rest, you need to give some time to self improve, and some time for relaxation and work and all of that. So you need to, I think, be aware of compartmentalization of your of your life. I would say not on not say that I'll retire at the age of 60 and then I'll do all of this. But I think you should sort of try to do a little bit of everything every day or every week or every month. Chalo, you know. So so retire every day, enjoy every day, work every day, study every day. Do everything sort of every day, a little bit. Don't. I think it's just a simple habit as that, and the child in you doesn't die away. I mean, we bury it, but the child is there. I mean, you find you're sort of ageless. I mean, you hang out with a 10-year-old, you feel like a 10-year-old. You're not. You remember yourself as a 10-year-old. So so it's cool. So I think habits makes the man. So you pay a price for sleeping late, drinking too much, eating too much, whatever, too much. So sleeping too much, sleeping too little, whatever. So once that sort of goes into your, and you need to also enjoy these habits. I mean, it's one thing is for me to. I'm not saying this so that you follow this moronic, monotonous drill that sucks the joy out of your life. No,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm saying your joy should be in this.
That's right.
You see,
Right.
and that sets the stage. Then you're curious, and but what option do you have? I mean,
That's true.
when you think about it, I mean, I think about it logically. I mean, what is the option? You think you've arrived, you're dead. I mean, when you ask for no change, when you think you've arrived, you're basically asking for death, right?
That's right.
What else is it?
You stop changing then,
So,
yeah.
you stop changing. So, I think life doesn't give you that option. But I've been following my say, one of the benefits of getting older is you follow, like for instance, my IIT batchmates. They've all sort of died, if you will. In their 18, now they're in their 50s and so on. So you see them over time spans,
Yeah.
and you realize the compounding effect of habits is very
That's true.
powerful.
That's true.
Very
That's
powerful.
true.
I met one senior of mine at IIT recently. I mean, he was a certified genius, and I met him a few months ago, and I realized that he is even brighter than he was in IIT. I mean, he was a genius
Mm-hmm.
then,
Mm-hmm.
and I can tell you his name. He's a professor. He's the IIT gold medalist, Jayesh Bilare. He's a legend, and so I met him. I met him after, I really never knew him. So he was in my school, college, so I knew about him. But I realized that active cultivation of mind for so many decades has made him a superman.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it probably is this sort of daily. I'm not even sure what his routines are and all of that, but I can looking at him, I felt the compounding effect of. He was so knowledgeable about fields that even today's scientists would not know. I thought so. So I
Great.
think habits. I think.
Sure. Sure. So what's a child in you learning deeply as of now? So what one thing that you are that's new, which
Oh,
is you're learning
right
now?
now I'm learning Qbism theory in quantum mechanics.
Okay. And in layman's term, how do you define that?
Well, it is Qbism. It is quantum Bayesianism. Basically, quantum theory is a funky theory where basically
Okay.
believes that the micro world behaves counterintuitively and so on and so forth. And so quantum cubism is sort of a very revolutionary reinterpretation of quantum mechanics. So quantum mechanics is a big conundrum for scientists, which is because its conclusions are counterintuitive, irrational. It doesn't sort of fit into any logical framework.
Right.
So this guy changes a few assumptions by which uh, the conclusions of quantum mechanics can be well understood. All the
Okay.
contradictions drop,
Okay.
but the assumptions are very Eastern and yogic
Mm-hmm. Mm.
in the sense what he says, which is why I'm so interested because basically, our the Eastern teaching, our Indian thought is always that the world is Maya,
Right.
the observer and the observed. There's a distinction. Science is focused on the observed, and the observer is forgotten because the
Mm-hmm.
world out there is a static world. Whether you
Right.
observe or I observe, it is raining. It is raining. Okay.
Right.
So now Qbism throws a whole wrench into the whole. Uh, it's a very powerful change. It
Okay.
says that the observer influences the observed.
Okay.
Okay. So that sort of woke me up. I mean, this is what our sages used to say,
That
and
sounds
so
like magic, actually.
it is magic. And
Yeah.
so what Qbism says is that each sentient being, you, me, everyone, is sort of a quantum wave function. Okay,
Okay.
the way reality will respond to you will be different from the way it will react to me based on your
Mm-hmm.
wave function. And what is your wave function? Wave function is sort of, in mathematical terms, I mean, just to make it very simple, is a sort of probabilistic chart of various events that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
That is called a wave function. So there's an 80% chance that you'll be a nice guy, 10% chance, blah, blah, blah. Okay? And so that's how it is. For all these years, quantum mechanics believed that the wave function was a property of the observed, of reality.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so when you observe reality, the probability function collapses into a reality. So say you have a box inside. There is something, some material lying there. You're not observing it, and so what is the matter in there? You really don't know what state it is in. The act of opening it, the wave function collapses, and then you see, okay, it's an ice cream or whatever. Okay, that
Mm-hmm.
is how the quantum mechanical version is. That the wave function is a property of the observed, not the
Observe.
observer.
Right.
Now, this theory flips it around and says it is a function of the observer. Now,
Observer.
that
Yeah.
that uh, that is a very big change, and this is not a philosophical musing or anything. This is, they're doing a lot of experiments, math, and everything. So I got deeply into it because I felt that this is like headed totally down, the Upanishadic path. And so I recommend people to read a little bit about Qbism. Time will tell whether it's right or wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but it is in sync with Eastern thought. So I'm
Okay.
like, so this last Saturday, Sunday, I did nothing else.
Okay.
I was reading about Qbism. Since you asked, I had to tell you.
Of course,
So,
yeah. I'm sure that's a new thing for me. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sure. The from cubism to economy, right? You've seen the Indian economy very closely as it has followed its cycles over the past 3 decades. Where do you see the India of, say, the next 3 decades, or say 2050? On one hand, we have the challenge of a burgeoning population, bureaucracy, and lag against other emerging countries in terms of innovative technology, right? On the other, we have a thriving startup ecosystem. We have the right kind of demographics, right, and a much more democratized opportunity set, because people are now starting up new things, and new businesses are setting up. So where do you see broadly India of 2050?
See, I see it from a long-term perspective. If you look at the last 2,000 years, India was uh, India was 30. 30 odd% of the global GDP for, I think, out of except for the last 600 odd years, or even less, maybe 400 years, India was somewhere between 20 to 30, 35% of global GDP. So even so, when the British came to India, we didn't take them seriously because Brits were, I think, 3% of India's GDP. Okay, and so anyway, there's a whole history to it. I'm saying that we dropped off. If you take a long-term chart, our long-term means and averages are in the GDP range, being 20-30% of world GDP, and we dropped off in the British era because they basically plundered us. I mean, let's not whitewash that. And we became a very poor country. Now, so I think, so the real question you're asking is whether we'll catch up with the long-term averages, or this is a new low that will find new lows and so on and so forth. I basically believe that we'll catch up with the long-term averages.
Okay.
And I think the strength of India is the Indian genius. I think the individual Indian, rather. I mean, I would segregate this India business. We are not like some of the other large countries where 100,000 people work and make an Apple iPhone and so on and so forth. Maybe that will also happen, but I'm saying at the end of the day, the Indian's genius lies in the individual. And so I think that there are very bright people out there. And I think the biggest thing that has happened is the internet. The most amazing thing is I'm studying Qbism not by going to a college or university, because there's YouTube and there's coursework on the net.
Yeah.
So I shudder to think what some guy sitting in some small town is doing.
Sure.
He must be already far ahead. So I think our time to I think the Indian will make it happen. I mean, I'm not surprised that an Indian is the CEO of Microsoft and Google and all of that. So I think as our systems catch up, I think we've been exposed to the world now.
Right.
So, and the Indian is great at adapting the best of each. We wear jeans, we wear saris, we wear, we do both. We are very bicultural that way. So I have no doubt that we'll do well, and a lot depends on the current. I mean, we have a window right now, which is that our demographics is in our favor. So there's a certain urgency that we don't lose this time, this decade and the next decade, before an aging population catches up with us before 2050.
Right.
But yeah, I think I don't see why we won't do well, because there's nothing to me in the Indian system that makes me believe that we don't worship prosperity, wealth, success, good life. We've always been that way. In fact, I would argue that poverty is an artificial construct that has been imposed on us. And so I go to Jagannath Puri, which is an old temple in Orissa. The food you get there, I mean, you won't get that food in a Michelin star restaurant. Seriously. And I go there to have lunch, breakfast, and dinner. It's so good. And so there's nothing to me suggest. I mean, I make another forecast that just like our kids today can't believe that we didn't have phones and we didn't have motorcycles and so on and so forth, and we had to wait in queues for a phone in the 80s and 70s. I mean, I think our grandchildren will probably find it hard to believe that we were poor.
That's true.
So I don't think there's nothing to suggest to me that we have any inner poverty as such. which is
Mm-hmm.
a good starting point.
Good starting point, I'm
Firstly,
sure.
we are not we celebrate wealth and we celebrate all of that. So I think why won't I have no doubt
Mm-hmm. So,
that
of the little I've read your views on the education system, right? Since we're talking about the new India, the individual power that we have as a country, you believe that formal education is a necessity, but it's not sufficient, right?
correct.
If you can just elaborate a bit on this, and what can someone do? Since a lot of youngsters would be listening to this, what can someone do for the next 10 years or 20 years to become a clearer, more independent thinker? Assuming one is starting out today.
See, the first you have to recognize that we always had this apprentice system as education.
Mm-hmm.
Rembrandt taught his students by them hanging around with Rembrandt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, our gurus taught us because we hung around with them.
That's right.
Okay? No one went to a degree and got a degree and all of that.
Right.
So all this emerged with the coming of the Industrial Revolution, where some General Motors wants 100,000 workers and 10,000 managers. So you created a MBA school, you created an engineering school, you got some degree, and you joined the cog in the machine. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so that's the history of formal education. Okay, nothing wrong with it, but you should see things in context for what it is. Now, did I was watching Steven Spielberg's biography,
Mm-hmm.
which I recommend people to watch.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's somewhere in Disney or I think one of those. Somewhere it'll be there. And
Right.
so Steven Spielberg tries to get into film school in California. They reject him. Okay, so he gets no one. We don't get into film school. So what does he do? I think it was Universal. One of the big studios. I think it was
Okay.
Universal, but
Sure.
I forget the. I could be wrong on the name. Used to have these open buses where tourists can come and spend the day and leave. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what did our great Spielberg do? He would enter the campus as a tourist and then escape from the bus
Okay.
and act like an employee of Universal Studios.
Okay.
He took it to a point where he actually had an office. He took it to a point where they actually thought he was an employee of
Okay.
Universal Studios.
Okay.
Till one day, the number two guy at Universal Studios caught this monkey sitting around and said, like, isme kuch hai. This guy if nothing else, he's got balls.
Right.
So he gives him his first assignment,
Mm-hmm.
which is go make jaws.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the rest is history. He was 26 or 28 or whatever,
Right.
20. I'm saying that not for any other reason, but there are limits to formal education. I'm
Uh-huh.
not criticizing it. It's a
Mm-hmm.
necessary. I'm not saying people to drop out of school, but let me also say that recently I've been counseling children who came back from Yale, NYU, this and that with degrees to India, thinking there'll be jobs waiting for them. None of them got a job. Okay, not some of them got, some didn't get, and then they realize getting a job of 50,000 rupees or 1 lakh rupees a month or 2 lakh rupees a month is a lot of work. It's not so easy to come by. So my point is that let education be educated, but don't live under this false premise that you'll gradually climb this ladder and you'll keep going one way, and the world is relative, right? So while you are studying and
Mm-hmm.
you hit the age of 25 and you've passed various courses, there'll be
Mm-hmm.
some crazy monkey like Steven Spielberg
Mm-hmm.
who's fiddling around since the age of 10 and has become a rabble rousing genius by the time he's 20 in
Right.
something that he does.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he may not have a degree,
Right.
but today that guy has YouTube, and today
That's
that
right.
guy has all the courses in the world
Uh-huh.
available.
Right.
So my basic issue, what I want to tell youngsters is that your max energy is in your post your teens till your early 30s, maybe late 30s. My biggest worry with formal education is that you spend almost the first 25 years accumulating degrees. You see, and my view is the other way around. I mean, I was funding myself at the age of 18 in the 70s.
20s.
Okay, I mean today I tell everyone you have no excuse to go to your parent after 18.
That's true.
Follow that rule, and okay, you want to do whatever you want to do, but stand on your feet while you study. I'm saying,
Right,
I
right,
mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not asking them to drop out,
right.
but be relevant. If you can manage that sort of balance, education and reality, you're relevant to the world. You have some skill set that someone is willing to pay you for
Mm-hmm.
while you study. Is
Mm-hmm.
the magic road for today. I'm not saying drop out of formal education. I'm not saying work full time. I'm
Right.
saying like be relevant, be employable, have skill sets that the world requires that you've learned, and don't wait till 25 for that to arrive on your doorstep. Start
Mm-hmm.
start in your teens,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that is. You
Right.
know, whatever that is, and so the because I fear that the way things are going, you're already a little old at 25.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. That's true.
You're already old at 25, and so that's too high a price to pay in terms of time. Is my so I think students need to go with the mindset of okay, I'll do my coursework, I'll do everything, but like even when I was doing my studies at NYU and so on, I was earning money every day. I was not living in the high horse that I'm going to study and then someone's going to drop me a job and then I'm going to work and I'll have a cool life. It doesn't work that
That's
way.
right. That's right.
So try to marry both is my. That's what I
Yeah.
mean by necessary and not sufficient. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
trying to decry formal education, but
That's
I'm saying that it's not sufficient
right. Mm-hmm.
for you to be relevant in this world today.
That's right.
So
That's right. You have an interest in yoga Vasistha, if I
yeah,
know correctly, right? And that's what the entire education of Lord Rama and the sage Vasistha is all about, right? Seventh century BC book, right? Or the lecture notes, right? It talked about the life, talked about universe, it talked about how do you deal with fear and grief and everything. What have been your biggest learnings from that one particular book?
well, I think it's profound because it's as contemporary today as it was then. And we thought we have a good education. You have no idea what education Ram was getting. I mean, the quality of education that okay, I don't want to argue and get into the academic debate of Ram and no Ram and this is mythology and no mythology. Forget all that. I'm not entering that. I'm just looking at the book for what it is. The book is just too profound for it to be anything than totally transcendental and totally relevant. I'm not saying it is important for you today. It tells you it tells you about capitalism. It tells you about relativity. It tells you about life, how you should lead your life. It tells you about how this universe came about, how it'll end. It talks about dinosaurs. It talks about lots of stuff. It's a big fat volume. So I'm still reading it. I mean, in fact, funny you mentioned it because I've been reading a chapter every day
Is it?
in this sort of last month, and I hope to now continue that habit. I mean, I have this habit of starting new things, but I've been reading it last few, so it's fresh in my mind. You mentioned it. Uh, there's all virtual reality, parallel universes, everything is in there. I mean, it's worth a read, not because it is very contemporary, and it gives you it gives you the tools. If you wish to listen, if
That's
you
right.
wish to follow, it gives you the tools that are very so. It's obviously a scholarly work. It's not. It is not just. So I would urge people to not fall into this trap of ancient book, this that this is all not relevant today. Go with an open mind and read it for what it is, rather than be biased by any religious overtones or any other overtones that you might have, the biases that you may or may not carry. You see, and read it for what it is, and it makes you a better human being. It'll make you a more profound person. I would say there are many Nobel prizes hidden in that book,
Oh, sure.
because
I'm
there's so
sure.
many other interpretations that we still don't know that are mentioned there. So
That's it.
so even you want to be a capitalist, so Vasistha tells Ram that, like, then why you want to settle for a couple of $100 million? There's a chapter on that. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm adding the million, of course. I mean, there's different connections, but
That's it.
he tells Ram that then why do you want to settle for just some new wealth? He says, why don't you set up your own solar system? You want to be a materialist, then you set up your own solar system. So what I'm saying is, it's got an expansive way of looking at every aspect of life. So what is good about Yoga Vasistha is that it sort of expands your frameworks. It makes you think more grandly than you ever have. So that is what I like. It's very upbeat, and it helps. It gives you energy, I feel.
Mm-hmm. Sticking with the book again, and the idea of mortality, you mentioned losing your father early on, right? So you've had your brush with mortality very early in life, right? And I'm sure, given your spiritual interest, you must have meditated or studied on this idea of mortality and death over the years. What have you found on this subject, or what have you learned on this subject?
Well, I don't know whether I can claim to have any greater knowledge than anyone else, but it's you have to look at life as a I say, take the jargon out of spiritualism. I say, look at life as a giant puzzle
Mm-hmm.
that you can solve. See, unburden yourself from all scriptures and conditioning,
Okay.
and look at life as a puzzle that you probably crack or not. And so you're alive, you're in this universe, you're here for a finite time, you're going to die. You're going to you can conceive to an extent. To some extent, you can't perceive the world. So why don't you start looking at it as from a non-dogmatic point of view, as a grand puzzle? And that's how I think our sages began.
Mm-hmm.
See, so if you look at our Upanishads, if you look at Ashtavakra Gita, there's no mention of God in any of the Upanishads.
Mm-hmm.
There's no
That's it.
there's no description of puja, worship, nothing. It's
That's it.
all it's all the approach that I'm sort of saying, which is, look at it as for what it's given. It's a pot of clay given to you, and you now figure it out. If you read
Mm-hmm.
Ashtavakra Gita, it's only 12 pages. It's considered the ultimate book in Indian spiritualism.
That's it.
There's no mention of anything.
Mm-hmm.
So you apply the same logic to death. I mean, uh, it is out there. No one, no one, no one lives forever,
That's it.
and because no one lives forever, there's a certain beauty and urgency to life. Or rather, if death didn't exist, I think life would not exist. So everything in life is opposite bricks sort of reinforce the wall. So the opposite sort of the very structure of this universe is built on opposites. See, so one doesn't exist without the other. So when you ask for no death, you're basically asking for no life also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
And there's another view on death that you realize that the Upanishads say it better than anyone. They say that you have a desire to live, but it also says that you have a desire to die. Okay, which is something to think about. Okay, and now why does it say it? We think it can't be, but we do.
Right.
We say we want to be stress free. We want peace. We don't want any change. All that you'll achieve in death. Nothing will change. You'll just be hanging in there. You asking for it every day. Okay? You're resisting life. You want life with its own terms and conditions. Uh, you get stressed with change. You don't resist change. What are you? All that is basically symptomatic of the fact that you wish death also. It's not that it's being imposed on you. So that also is clear as you look at it as a puzzle. Okay, I mean, I'm not talking this from a dogmatic, or I'm not trying to pout spiritualism. So these few things are clear to us, that it is also self-invited. We desire life, but we also desire an end to it. Okay, I mean, it's hard to digest, uh, but every time someone says I'm stressed, I just don't want this to happen, that to happen, this to happen, that to happen. Uh, Basically, life is too much for you.
Yeah.
Basically,
Right.
so a few things like that are clear to me, and then I think Socrates says it the best. So when he was about to die, his students were all sitting around him and weeping. That he's just going to die now.
Mm-hmm.
And Socrates was sort of unmoved by it all. So then they couldn't figure it out as to why, like. So Socrates said something very interesting. He said that, listen, there are only two options that happen after death. Okay, one is that I'm still living in some odd form, in which case there's no problem. The second option is that I'm truly dead; it's gone. So there's no one to worry. You see, in the first there is no worry. In the second option, there is no one to worry.
That is true.
Okay. So logically, why should I cry? It's one of these two options, in both of which I shouldn't be crying. So why am I crying now? Why should I cry now? So
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something to that point also. I think it's I think in a way death is something uh, that whatever we try, it's there are mysteries on this in life that will remain mysteries, and death is one of them. And it's I would say it is in my personal view, it's the culmination of life, and it's uh, probably a very high point, ecstatic high point. So because it wouldn't be otherwise, because nothing else in life seems to suggest otherwise. So given that it is finite, given that it's bound to happen, given that you might have an afterlife or not, in both those circumstances, your conclusion is the same. Live your life, and be aware of the fact uh, that you're also seeking it. That you think you're resisting it, and once you're aware of that, a lot of your stress and your resistance to living and life's ups and downs will also disappear. So part of the reason you are stressed is because you fundamentally distrust life and the universe. You claim to go to temples, you claim to read religious books, you read the Gita, you read the Bible, you do all of that, but it really doesn't. You really don't believe that, God does it for you. That's why you're
Mhm.
stressed. You have to do it yourself, correct?
That's right.
That's the root of stress, is the fact that you are you have to control the universe. Universe बदमाश है, basically.
Uh-huh.
मैं नहीं करूँगा तो ये चलेगा नहीं,
That's right.
करेक्ट है. तो ये सब होने के बाद why do we when we develop these life negating tendencies ourselves, we are sort of uh, we're sort of confused. I think we need to be uh, very uh, clear about it. I think that life and death are parallel phenomena that are happening every moment, in a sense. So every day you get up. Actually, when you go to deep sleep at night,
You're
no
dead.
one, yeah. I mean, the fact that you even wake up is sort of a new life. So I mean, uh, anyway, these are some of my random thoughts on a subject
Sure.
that you brought up.
It's a fascinating subject. You've had a close call with that 26/11 2008. You were at the Taj Mahal Palace
Yeah.
Hotel, right? Uh, so tell us about that experience, and especially tell us about the key lessons that in hindsight that came out when you look back at that night.
See, I've been asked this question often, and people want to hear a dramatic response generally, but I would say that uh, that fear and is an option that you have only when you're sitting in a Hollywood film where there's firing and you have to escape and all of that, and you feel fear. In a real life situation, you have no choice, because if you have fear, you are inviting more trouble, and you can't think clearly. You won't be able to come out of the situation.
Right.
So I don't think in life you have the luxury of feeling fear, because fear
Mm-hmm.
clouds your ability to act in the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, it also becomes clear that nothing's going to happen to you. So, in situations like this, you there's some you just know it. And it's funny I say it, because I also watched uh, some of the videos of the cameras inside the hotel, and it was interesting to see that you come to a conclusion that you sort of die when you have to,
Mm-hmm.
because there were you saw the firing begins, all of that happens, but at the end of the day, you see that some people seem to be in an existential trap, that they can't seem to run away. They're in every camera. You can see them like Charlie
Mm-hmm.
Chaplin running around. And there are others who just manage to go away. So I think the other thing that it taught me is that we were basically sitting ducks. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they were not some great terrorists or great great martial people who had come to attack the Taj. They were
Hmm.
basically villagers, in my view, with no training. I mean, they removed their shoes when they walked in. They couldn't press the elevator button. Uh, so it was our lack of preparation.
Right.
If there were some one or two people with guns inside the property, I think they probably would have run away. They almost shot each other. I mean, the two guys came from one side, two guys came from the other side, and there's some fighting where they were shooting at each other also.
Yeah.
So, I just think it is. I think nothing of it. I mean, lots of people, uh, you know, think that it was really, if anything, it made me sort of angry that I didn't have a gun.
Hmm.
If I had a gun, I would have also been out, defending that, because I don't think you needed. There was they met no resistance for a long period of time. I thought, as a
That's it.
guest. I mean,
Hmm.
finally, everyone came, but for a long period of time, there was no resistance, and that's why. If there was some resistance, I think they would have become defensive, and so that's my
Hmm.
personal view. So
Hmm.
I I don't think it was such a diabolical plot. I think it was we just let it get worse because of our unpreparedness.
Hmm.
Is
Hmm.
my sort of feeling, and I'm not blaming anyone. This is the first time it happened, so it happened, and now we are well prepared, and now we have security and all of that. But on hindsight, that is the learning from it. That it wasn't some very frightful demonic act. It was we just let it get we let it get prolonged. It got prolonged because of our own lack of preparedness. That's how
Hmm.
I felt, and I didn't feel, and I don't mean to say this on hindsight, but I've always said that I frankly felt it was an amateur operation, and there was, yeah, I mean, it is frightening, but I don't think it was so frightening that it'll scar you for life or anything. I don't think. Anyway, that's my view.
Sure. Sure. About the COVID pandemic that the world has been going through for the past almost like 1.5 years, right? Right. Uh, what has changed for you in the post-COVID world? I- I'm saying post-COVID, we're still not passed through this epidemic, but in a post-COVID world compared to the pre-COVID world, what views about the world that have really changed for you, both for investing, life, decision making, and everything? How do you look at the world that way?
Well, I think many ways. For the first time, I don't have to explain what I do. For years, people were wondering why am I sitting in, why am I not in the office? Why I don't have so this work from home concept. I mean, frankly, since the 80s, even at Morgan Stanley, I would not spend all my time in the office. I'd be
Hmm.
floating around. One, it made my life easier. I don't have to explain to people anymore that office में मिलते हैं यहाँ मिलते हैं वहाँ मिलते हैं, because I used to sit in a hotel at work, and that was one thing. The second thing, I think these are all forces. It's a force of nature.
That's it.
We have to treat pandemic as a force of nature, and viruses are like a balancing force.
Hmm.
When the system is out of imbalance, viruses are all around us.
Right.
And so every day our body is fighting tens of thousands of viruses. When some imbalances build up, viral attack happens, pandemic happens, some imbalances in the system. So obviously, so nature, there's a good side, but usually when it's a force of nature, whether it's an earthquake or whether it is a flood or whatever, you will find.
Hmm.
I personally feel that you find on balance a lot of good also happens. Yes, I'm not taking away the misery. I'm not trying to belittle it. But I'm saying at the same time, a lot of good will come. So I'm personally seeing that. I mean,
Right.
I personally think this is a historic time, and that as time goes by, we will see it in a different perspective. We will see, we'll have a more objective view, and we'll find that a lot of good is also come out. And I personally believe that a lot of good is has come out, and that's why markets are flourishing worldwide.
Okay.
Markets are a signal in that direction. So, and no good things happens without some sort of human sacrifice. You know,
Right.
you go into any family, you go into any society, you go into any era, there's a price, there's a human price. If you go deep into your family, you'll find that some person paid the price for you doing well. So this is there is a price that we are paying as a society, but a lot more good will come out. And I mean, I can keep expounding on it. So I don't know how much time
That's
you
it.
have, but
That's it.
I think the markets are a precursor. First are the first indication that a lot of good will also come in the in I think out of this situation, and
Okay.
it's clearly I think the biggest change in my view is the way we're looking at money, the way we're looking at human development, the way economic policy is going through a shift. You see, so we are following the policies now that we followed during World War II, which got us out of the Great Depression. We
Okay.
forgot about it.
Yeah.
And then we went into this loop of Keynesianism and monetarism, and and so on and so forth, balanced budget and all that thinking. But now we are sort of entering the era of what I think is modern, what I call MMT, modern monetary theory. I urge everyone to read a lot more about MMT,
Okay.
modern monetary theory. I'm not
Sure.
saying I agree with it. I'm not saying you should agree with it. I'm not saying anyone should agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
But it provides you a framework to understand what is going on today.
Right.
It's very important that you people are at least aware of it. So
Yeah.
so there are the founder of modern monetary theory is a person called Warren Mosler, and I've studied it in great detail.
Okay.
And I think people should read it because it'll give them some perspective as to why economic policy, the changes that are possibly happening, are are good for mankind in the long term. For instance, let me say World War II. In World War II, the US ran budget deficits of 20 to 25% every year for, I think, I forget the exact number of years, 5 or 6 years or whatever. Keynes was the architect of that. They controlled the interest rate. They made sure that inflation remains on track, and it basically set the stage for the world recovery. The post-depression era really began happened because of World War II, and our economic policies now seem to mirror the ones at that time. So I think one needs to understand that a little bit and understand the framework of MMT a little bit.
Sure.
And I think I see that because a lot of investors are talking to me, and they're perturbed by all that is going on, and why markets are up. You see,
Sure.
blind expenditure, blind crazy budget deficits, crazy everything worldwide. You see?
Right.
And markets are
Right.
at new highs.
Right.
So I'm not surprised.
Okay.
I think it'll go to newer highs.
Oh yeah.
So I think people should. I think the economics is undergoing. I think we all need to re-understand economics a little differently. We've treated money in a very sort of in a certain model, and it needs to be treated slightly differently. And so we're possibly headed into an era where we're probably setting the stage for some sort of universal basic income. We're setting up a stage for addressing inequalities in a slightly different way. I think you cannot address inequalities by purging technology or turning back time. So you need to have new ways, new economic thinking. The good thing about the COVID pandemic, it is forcing it down the throats of people and
Yeah.
government. It
Mm-hmm.
would have never happened otherwise, because
Right.
I could have kept arguing about it for years, and many people
Right.
have been arguing, for decades.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think the good thing about the pandemic is that this is being imposed on humanity, and so it's an interesting experiment. If this experiment works, and if this new understanding of economics truly has legs and feet, and has foundation, then it opens a whole new era of growth and development for the world, and the market is sensing that. Market is sensing that. That's what I that's my sort of view. So overall, there's a lot of negativity in the short run, but in the long run, we might sort of switch gears, and we might realize that we wasted a whole generation's lives by thinking of economics in a certain way,
Okay. It's all coming
which
back
is
now.
outdated. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So time will tell. I mean, this is my
Yeah.
sort
Yeah.
of
Of
view.
course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yes. Fascinating. So, Vinod, so we are near the end of this discussion. So I have just five quick questions, right? Uh, One is, after having experienced life for more than half a century now, what, according to you, is the meaning and purpose of life?
Life is too grand to have a meaning and a purpose. To
Okay.
say that you came on earth for a meaning and purpose is to limit life, is
Okay.
to give life a utilitarian view.
Okay.
The problem lies in our utilitarian thinking. We
Uh-huh.
look for meaning and purpose in everything we do.
Okay.
We look for meaning and purpose to say, I love you to my child also.
Uh-huh.
We look for meaning and purpose. So this has become embedded in our thought process, and
Okay.
everything, school, degrees, exam, everything, meaning, purpose. No one's in it for knowledge anymore. It's for the degree. It's for the thing. There's a meaning and purpose. So as long as you are flanked by meaning and purpose, you have a problem. So, the universe and life is a little too grand to have come about because it could solve some problem, and so you have been dropped here to provide meaning and purpose to it. So drop that. I think drop that. There's a meaning and purpose to life. Life is grand and perfect the way it is, and so the changing the framework will energize you, will free you, and you will not have this jaded view, utilitarian view of life. Life also has ecstatic views. Life has much more to offer to you than an extra piece of bread and extra housing. That you need purpose and meaning. And the source of human what I'd say, psychotic problems and depression and so on and so forth, is that this thinking of meaning and purpose has gone in deep. And so when you're intelligent, and when you're intelligent, which many people are, and when you start thinking of purpose and meaning, this is what Western philosophers have done, and half of them have, like, have gone to mental asylums like Nietzsche and so on and so forth, or committed suicide and so on and so forth, because your arrogance to believe that you can articulate the purpose and meaning firstly, and the fact that there should be a meaning and purpose for you to be alive is missing the whole glory of life. You might be as causeless,
That's it.
or it is something that will be bestowed on you. So why Why? So the Indian approach of looking at it as Leela, as play, is a little much more interesting and much more true than this utilitarian sort of thinking, which is crept into our thinking. So we should focus on excellence in whatever we do, rather than success, meaning, purpose, salary, promotion, titles, this, that, and the other. And so let your energies flow in the direction that you enjoy, and let it immerse you, let it go deep in you, and your purpose, meaning, and all emanates from that flow of energy. It doesn't come from a mental construct. It comes from the fact that your energy is flowing in an ecstatic way that gives you joy, and therefore, by definition, then becomes maybe your meaning of living. You love to paint. All of that happens, but the ordering is very important.
Mhm.
The
Right.
ordering, what is the byproduct and what is. So it is like sleep, no? I mean, like, you can't force yourself to sleep. You can just sit in bed, read a book, listen to some music, and hope for the best, and sleep happens. So I think life is a little simpler that way, and I think this meaning, purpose, this whole sort of thing has taken us off on a crazy trajectory that I have to walk on the shoulders, crush 10 other people to get ahead in my meaning and purpose. My meaning and purpose, is superior than your meaning and all sorts of
Right. Right.
chaos. And this is all. This is what the evangelicals do: try to convert people. This, that, and the other. Me, my meaning and purpose is to take you to God. All sorts of crap.
That's true.
So I mean, this is at the root of a lot of human. But funnily, we're not aware of it. We all walk around thinking of meaning and purpose as though it's like it's so anyway. So that is
And also
my
ask and also ask questions on meaning and purpose.
yeah. Everything is
So
what it is. It is spontaneous. It is what it
that's
is.
it.
This conversation is spontaneous for what it is. There is no meaning
That's
and purpose to it, in my view. Some
that's it.
meaning and purpose might come out of it. That's up to you know whatever.
That's right. So to use the river analogy, you just need to flow rather than worrying about where you're going to end up. Right? You just flow.
Correct.
You
Correct.
just be
So
there.
there's
Yeah.
just be there.
Ah,
And
great.
just it's
Wonderful.
a wonderful world. It's a wonderful. We have senses. I can see you. I can talk to you. I can have an intelligent conversation with you. There are so many people who can hear all this. Life has so much to offer. You
That's true.
know, so much to offer. It doesn't matter where on the river you are and I am on which part of the river. It's less
That's it.
important. The fact that
That's it.
you're flowing in the river is
That's
a
it.
privilege.
That is true.
So that is an end in itself to a good extent. You know.
That's true. That's true. Sure. What's the single best piece of advice you ever got?
I don't think I can put a hierarchy on the advice
Okay.
I got. But yes, I mean, finally it does come down to my mother. I mean, my mother was quite a superior person. And one piece of advice, I wouldn't say it's the best piece of advice, but one piece of advice that's stuck in my brain, which is she said that you work very hard and you make a lot of money. That's good. Nothing wrong with that. But she said that you should aim to make money while you're even just sitting around. Money should be de-linked from work. You should work for the joy of it, and money should flow uh, despite you working or in spite of you working.
Okay.
So that was like a puzzling thing for a 12-year-old to hear. I mean, I was 12 or 13. But that stuck in my brain. And I've sort of tried to implement that a little bit.
That's great.
But I can't claim that is the best piece of advice
Yeah.
or the worst piece of advice, but it is one noteworthy piece. Yeah.
Sure. That's how you lived your life as well. Right?
Correct.
So, yeah.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. What's the single worst piece of advice that, in hindsight, sounded like a bad piece of advice for you?
Uh, Listening to Listening to others,
Okay.
basically. So I'm not saying don't listen to others, but on hindsight, I found that your inner voice is it, and I'm reminded of in Shiva's sutras. Shiva's first sutra is that first know full well that you're all alone. This is opening line. Okay. Then he goes on to say, don't be, don't take others' views and this and that and so on. So that's a separate view. So I do think that suppressing your inner voice to take on advice of the external, whoever they may be. They may be well-meaning. I'm not saying they're doing it, but what is good for you, only you know.
That's it.
No one
That's
else
it.
knows. No one else
Sure.
can be you. You are you. And so take advice. I tell people, but don't necessarily uh, uh, go by it, because at the end of the day, you're accountable for your own life. So where it finally synchronizes with your own thought process, go with it. But don't don't diminish yourself by thinking that others can do the thinking for you.
Sure. If you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell him?
I would. Good question. I would say. Uh, I would reinforce one thing. I would thank my 18-year-old for keeping his intentions and heart clean through it all.
Mm-hmm.
Despite all the temptations, despite all the shortcuts, despite all the tough times, and despite everything, the one thing the 18-year-old did right, I would applaud, which is that he kept his heart clean and kept his intentions going.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else, we made mistakes, we did everything else. Nothing else mattered at the end of the day.
Right.
But at the end of the day, the difference came about because the 18-year-old kept his heart clean and kept his intentions good.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Everything else is facts. They don't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
So I would thank the 18-year-old that through it all, he didn't give up on these two things. He might have given up on many things.
That's it.
I'm not saying the 18-year-old was a saint. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that on these two things, the 18-year-old never gave up.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, I'm grateful.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Sure. Just a couple of more questions. If you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
No, I would have nothing. I think words, uh, words don't help in understanding or improving reality so much. So part of the problem is there's too many words and too much logic. There's too much books. God has said this, one has said that. Einstein said this. I said that. Follow me. At the end of the day, the human being is as miserable as he was. Okay, it's made no dent. So I won't add to the garbage by having a billboard and giving another piece of advice.
Right.
Uh, as I said, life is a grand puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
You need to figure it out,
Mm-hmm.
and the puzzle can be solved.
Right.
So, and no one can do it for you,
Right.
and no words will get you there either. So you
Right.
just have to live life and figure it out. So, in a way, there's no shortcut. So,
Sure.
so, so I would not have a billboard. I would not. No, none of that.
So maybe a message, figure it out yourself.
Yeah, As Buddha said, be a light unto yourself. I mean, he said it right. That was his final statement,
That's right.
apparently.
That's right.
Be a light unto. I think he said it right. I think. I think basically a lot of what you've discussed is what that one line says. In a way, indirectly.
Yeah, that's right.
So be a light unto yourself. Yeah.
That's it. Sure. Here's my closing question. What is the kindest thing that anyone has ever done for you?
I have I have no hierarchy of kindness, firstly.
Okay.
So I can't say what is kinder than the other.
Okay.
I can say that that many of the things that I thought were tough in my life were the kindest thing that happened to me. It made me empathetic. It made me a deeper human being. It made me reassess, and I understand the misery of others, and I understand the pain of others as a result. So that wouldn't have happened without some tough things happening, and so it is all very relative as to what you think is. Sometimes the toughest thing that happened to you has been the kindest thing done to you if you take your whole life in perspective. Yes, you would have struggled for 6 months. In COVID times, you're struggling and this and that, and it looks unkind. But who knows? So, but if you look back at life, and I would say if everyone looks back at life, objectively, you will see it is a string of pearls. Everything that happens to your life is a string of pearls. It sort of comes together. And the major turning points are points where you had a setback. You had a setback, and on hindsight, as time goes by, and time is the great lord of this world. Only time clears your gaze and your perspective. Nothing else does. Sometimes
That's it.
you realize that yes, some of the toughest things were also the kindest thing. Depending on your relative point of view.
Right.
It sort of ebbs and flows. You think it's tough one day, but on hindsight, it turns out to be
That's right.
a kind thing. So I think life is this flow, between opposites. So it's better not to compartmentalize these things as the worst thing or the kindest thing, because the kindest thing you can do is to give some person a lot of pocket money, and it probably is the worst thing you can do to him over time. So, or vice versa. So who's to judge as to how life flows? I mean, so it's better not to have these categorizations, in my perspective, at least. And just accept it for what it is, and they both
Great.
sort of coexist.
That's it.
Toughness, kindness, toughness, kindness, toughness. So it's the flow of life.
That's it. Wonderful. So Vinod, that's all from my side. Thank you for all the wonderful insights. Amazing
No,
session personally for me. Learned a lot. Right.
thank you,
So
Vishal. You've been very patient and kind, and you've turned out to be a very good listener, and that is a scarce commodity in today's age. So I wish you all the best. I
thank you
love the
so much.
book you sent me. I will read it,
Thank you so much.
but I think you're being very sincere, and all the best, and may the force be with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.